In this country, in these hard times, when everybody shouts from the hilltops that they are hard up, that there's no money, and I hear my friend the capitalist playing his usual role of a stuck pig whenever you hold a knife to him, I think of the poor devil who is going about without a meal. These are the words of Captain Arthur Andrew Cipriani, speaking in the Legislative Council in 1941. The tone of his speech was a familiar one, since Cipriani was identified as a leader who always fought for justice for the poor and exploited. A man of the people, Arthur Andrew Cipriani, 1875 to 1945. At a time in Trinidad when being white was considered upper class and where one did not mix, there was a trade union leader and politician called Captain Cipriani, whose life was dedicated to serving the working class. Born in Trinidad on January 31st, 1875, to parents of Corsican and French stocks, Cipriani belonged to that group referred to as French Creoles. His father, Albert Henry Cipriani, and his mother had arrived in the island colony of Trinidad in the middle of the 19th century and established a successful agricultural business in the city of Port of Spain. The Ciprianis were related to the well-known Agostini family, also early settlers in Trinidad, and together the two families played important roles in the development of agriculture, commerce, politics, and sport in the country. As one of the three sons, Arthur was described as being bright and inquisitive with fearless tendencies. Author Vivian E. Henry stated that Cipriani from an early age displayed a spirit of fearlessness which has characterized his whole life. A fearlessness regardless of class, color, or creed, and a desire to protect those least able to help themselves. Teenaged Arthur attended St. Mary's College, where he excelled academically, although he didn't win one of the coveted island scholarships. After leaving St. Mary's College, Cipriani became a cocoa planter. In this capacity, he employed many people, but unlike many plantation owners, he was never seen barking orders at his employees. Rather, he assured. He continued as a planter until the outbreak of World War I. Then, with a changing society around him and acquiring a new awareness of social strata, Cipriani attempted to convince both the local and imperial governments that Trinidad and the other British West Indian colonies had men who were as loyal to the throne as other members of the Commonwealth. However, racism kept non-white West Indians out of the army. Notwithstanding his early defeat, Cipriani again agitated to the local and overseas authorities for a West Indian regiment to join the World War effort. This was at first rejected. Then, 1 year later, the colonial government rescinded their position, and the name of Arthur Andrew Cipriani was the first to be found on a list published in the Port of Spain Gazette on June 12, 1915, of Caribbean troops to be sent to the battlefront. It was a remarkable achievement for a one-man crusade. In the army, Cipriani rose to the rank of captain and commander of the British West Indian Regiment, and after his return from World War I, his popularity grew exponentially. According to historian Professor Bridget Brayton, because of Cipriani's stoic defense of his men against British Army racism and discrimination, they idolized him. In 1919, back home, Cipriani was elected president of the Soldiers and Sailors Union, an organization set up to look after the interests of the demobilized men. Wartime experiences had a profound effect on Cipriani, contributing greatly to his own political awakening and the maturing of his social conscience. Cipriani's next step in his political evolution was to join the TWA, the Trinidad Working Men's Association, the sole representative organization of the working class. Together with leader Howard Bishop, He participated in a series of public meetings throughout the country, playing an essential role in awakening the political consciousness of the population. Cipriani was a gifted orator, and people were drawn to him. Cipriani's ethnicity had added appeal, with working-class people of African and Indian descent being flattered that a white man was championing their cause. Cipriani was expected to be able to bridge the divide between the two ethnic groups. Many felt that he was in a better position to negotiate with British officials than a black man. In Trinidad's first election on February 7, 1925, Cipriani won his seat convincingly and retained it until 1945. In the Legislative Council, he championed the struggle of the working class, fighting tirelessly for working men's compensation, old age pension, an 8-hour workday, minimum wage laws prohibiting employment under age 12, and compulsory education. Among his more impassioned statements was one advocating old age pension when he admonished, "It is true that the old age pensioner has no longer the use of his teeth to masticate the food that you and I live on, but he can well live on slops, and who is to provide it? Government in its position, sir, ought to take care of old people and the poor instead of making it difficult for them to exist." It is said that this knowledge inspired the conversion of the TWA to the Trinidad Labour Party in 1932, the country's first political party. And even as Cipriani became identified with working class causes, another trade unionist with similar intent emerged. Tubal Uriah Butler was a radical protagonist compared to Cipriani's more moderate approach. As their paths crossed, Cipriani was accused by Butler and others of being too conservative and not totally willing to do whatever it took to get the attention of the colonial administration. Cipriani's ascendancy over labor was now challenged by the spread of black nationalism and race consciousness. Owing to his conservative approach and the proliferation of contrasting leftist ideology through advocates like Marcus Garvey, Cipriani's hold over labor weakened considerably. On April 18, 1945, Captain Arthur Andrew Cipriani died. Describing his passing, writer Horace Harrigan said in the Sunday Guardian of 1997, "It was one of the saddest days in our history, as the great man was mourned at the funeral that brought out the masses." Captain Arthur Andrew Cipriani, a man of the people who fought for the people, both in the fields of labor and the corridors of power. Through the Hansard records of the Legislative Council and other historic documents, his story continues to be told.